Hi, so today I'll be filming my November wrap up because it is currently the 30th of November and I don't think I'm going to get any other books read. And I also want to film my TBR today so that I can decide what I might read next because it's a little bit up in the air at the moment. So today we'll be talking about my November TBR, November wrap up and what I read over the past month. So originally I had kept my TBR for November very small because I was writing a novel for NaNoWriMo, but I happened to finish NaNoWriMo really early, well kind of really early, about halfway through the month, so I had a lot of time for reading at the end of the month, and so I ended up reading a lot more books than I was planning, so let's go through that now. So first off, I read this graphic novel called Strong Female Protagonist by Brennan Lee Mulligan and Molly Ostertag, who is the illustrator. This is like a superheroes um, dealing with strong moral issues kind of story. And I guess there were a lot of superheroes and also dragons in this wrap up. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. I really loved this graphic novel. It raised a lot of issues about um, what it means to be a hero and how best superpowers would benefit the human race and how they should be used to the benefit of the human race, I guess. And it was really entertaining at the same time and had a lot of great characters, and I just really loved it. Then after that, I finished one of the three books that I was halfway through at the end of October, and that was We Are Pirates by Daniel Handler. This is one of his adult books following both a young girl who's about 14 and is dealing with an identity crisis a little bit. She's struggling to figure out who she is. She thinks she was a mistake, her parents didn't want her, and um, is trying to really come to grips with who she wants to be as a person and how that's different from how her family thinks of her. And also her father, who is struggling with kind of some of the same issues but from an adult perspective and from a male perspective, which is very important. And essentially, the girl whose name is Gwen tries to become a pirate and kind of succeeds in a kind of spiraling mess of crazy. At first, for like the first ages of this novel, like 2/3 of the way through, I wasn't that impressed. I found it a bit slow. I couldn't really connect well to the characters. I liked Gwen, but I hated her father, and I was trudging along. But the end, especially Gwen's perspective, really skyrocketed, and I think I ended up giving it a 4 stars. It was the kind of book you appreciate but not necessarily enjoy, kind of like um, The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling, which I appreciated and would rate pretty high, but I didn't love reading it, and I wasn't highly invested in the plot or the characters. That's kind of how I felt with this novel. So I appreciate its importance and the message it was telling, but I didn't enjoy my experience reading it. I think I gave it 4 stars. And then I read The Dragon's Eye, which was my TBR jar pick of the month. Um, this is the first in a novel series following the Dragonology franchise, I guess you'd call it. I have the big books in this bookshelf down here, and all different kinds of ones in the Ology franchise, but particularly Dragonology. And I also have the first 3 books in the novels. This is the first one. I've had this for a long time, and I had read it before, but I couldn't remember anything, so I'm very glad I decided to reread it. This follows 2 twins, Beatrice and Daniel, and their parents are archaeologists, they think. They're really dragonologists, but they have gone exploring and aren't coming back for the summer. So while Daniel and Beatrice are off school, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they've been sent to this school for dragonology. And essentially, lots of things happen. And yes, this is middle grade, but I found it really fun. And dragons, man. Dragons. I really love dragons. And yeah, I didn't love this. I wouldn't call it one of the best books I've ever read or anything. And I really struggled to find middle grade I absolutely adore. But it was really, really fun. I would definitely, if I had have been 12, like when I was 12 and read this the first time, I absolutely loved it. So, definitely a recommend for younger readers. Then, after finishing The Dragon's Eye, I read The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This is the first in the Remnant Chronicles and follows a girl, Leah, who is a princess, and an assassin who's sent after her, and a prince who she was supposed to marry, and she ran away from her wedding day, and essentially drama. And I don't want to talk too much about the plot because you should kind of go into it blind because it's kind of great that way. I took ages to read this, I think because I was sick at the start, and about halfway through I actually got into it properly and had some time to sit down and actually read it, not just pick up a few chapters every now and again. And once I did, I really, really loved this. This was amazing. I'm so excited for the sequel. The plot twist as to which boy was which, I did not see that coming. I was tossing up and down between the two all the way through the book, and it was not the one I was expecting at the time that it was revealed. So, yeah, everybody should read this. Anyone who's into young adult fantasy should read this. Yes, it's kind of more romancy than a heavy fantasy, but I feel like it could get more fantasy in future books. So I'm really excited to see where this goes. I gave this 5 stars. Then after finishing that one, I was looking for something kind of short and small to read while my mother was reading the next book I'm going to show you. So I read Swamp Bones by Kathy Reichs. This is a short story ebook published recently, pretty recently, set between her last short ebook, I think, or possibly the last published novel and the newly published novel. And I haven't read the new one yet, but I've read the last one, so it was kind of perfect timing. And it essentially follows a short trip that Temperance Brennan takes to the Everglades, and she has to deal with some alligators and some poachers and some dead bodies like normal. And it was short but really, really fun and had all the things I love about Kathy Reichs, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about before, but include accurate science, funny, I loved the sense of humour, and it was just great. It was great. I'm sure I gave it 4 stars, and that's only because it was a short story ebook, and I can never quite give them 5 stars. I'm just never quite content. And after that, I read The Great Zoo of China by Matthew Riley. This is the newest release by Matthew Riley, who is an author I absolutely adore. I love all of his things. I've never had one thing that I was not that fond of, except perhaps maybe his middle grade novels, but I still loved them. I'm just too old to really give a 5-star rating to a middle grade novel. But this was great. More dragons, and fast-paced action, and political kind of intrigue-ish a bit, but just action. That's what Matthew Riley is known for, and this certainly delivered. This is like kind of like Jurassic Park, but dragons. Jurassic Park, but dragons. And you probably couldn't make this into a movie anytime soon unless you spent a lot of money on it, because his action is super intense and extreme and huge, so difficult to conceptualize as a film in reality. But when you read it, it is like you're reading an action film. If you like action films, pick up Matthew Riley. So recommend. So good. Then I picked up The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey, which is the sequel to The Fifth Wave, and I loved The Fifth Wave. I gave The Fifth Wave 5 stars. I also gave this technically 5 stars, but I think it was more 4.5. It wasn't as good as The Fifth Wave, but I think where a lot of people had come at it expecting The Fifth Wave level of awesomeness, I'd come at it hearing a lot of reviews that it wasn't so awesome and was a bit of a disappointment. And I came into this expecting it to be a bit of a disappointment, and so it bumped up my level of actual enjoyment while reading this book. I loved this. Yes, I felt like there wasn't much plot development, nothing much actually happened, but I think it revealed a lot about the threat that the aliens pose to the world as a whole and how twisted and crazy they are, or that the plan is. It's very successful at what it's trying to do, and it's crazy. And I love the action, and I think that's what I really loved about the Fifth Wave. And I also really loved it in this. I loved the action, particularly the action that comes in the first opening sequence was breathtaking in its simplicity, but also its terrifyingness. Like, this is another book that I feel would reads like a movie in my head. So yeah, I can understand why people would be disappointed in this book. It didn't have that same ferocious energy so much as the first one, and the characters were a bit harder to connect to. There wasn't much plot going on, but the action made up for it for me. And I felt like I learned a lot from this book. I didn't feel like the position, a lot of people were saying the position hadn't seemed to have changed since the last book, and this could have just been tacked on with very little difference. And I disagree with that. I thought this really developed the idea of the aliens, and I feel like this is more a lead in to the next book rather than a continuation of the last book. But that's just my opinion, and I'm excited to see where the next book goes because I think it will be very telling as to the overall success of this series. And then I was looking for a bit of a change in pace, and so I picked up If I Stay by Gail Forman. I originally wasn't sure when I was going to get round to these, and I was seeing them sitting on my shelf going, I'll read you at some point, but it's not going to be today. And then I was thinking that the very day that I picked this up. And then I picked it up. I was looking for something. My shelf is highly filled at the moment with big, thick books and a lot of fantasy and action and hard-hitting things. And I was just looking for something not necessarily not hard-hitting, but short. And this is short. And also that I didn't have to focus on a world build that I have to in a lot of the other books that I have on my shelves at the moment. So I picked this up. I don't own a lot of contemporaries, which is really strange, but true. And even though I quite enjoy them. But this was great. I shed half a tear, as in I wasn't actually crying, but my eyes prickled a little bit. But I really enjoyed this. This follows Mia, whose parents and little brother and herself were in a car crash. Her and her brother are the only ones that survive on the scene, but her brother dies shortly after, and she's in a coma, trying to make the decision as to whether she should stay and live the life that she had going for her or die and be with her parents. And it was really touching and a great journey and short but sweet and beautiful, and I loved it. And then I read The Hangman's Revolution by Ian Colfer. This is the second book in the Warp series. This, I won't talk about the plot because it's the second book, but essentially is time travel, middle grade time travel with like hilarious humor, Victorian London, and also like FBI future, and it's great. And I read the first book a couple of months ago and really, really enjoyed it. And then I decided to pick this up. I found the start a bit slow, which I also found with the other one, but once I got into the swing of things, I really enjoyed it. Characters, great. Plot, fun. Writing. Oh, sorry. Writing was hilarious. I just really, really enjoyed this. Middle grade, so I wouldn't call it like the most outstanding read. It's not going to win any awards for me, but it was really fun and I really enjoyed my time reading this. And then I read Elusive by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is hopefully the first in a series following another superheroes idea where the population there was a big plague affecting a lot of people, and the vaccine for the plague caused some people to gain superhuman qualities. There's like five or maybe seven, I can't remember, different classes of these immunes who have these super charged abilities. And our main character, Sierra, I think that's how you pronounce it, Sierra, she is an illusionist and essentially can she's essentially a Mystique, but she's not as, good at it as Mystique is. She's still figuring out her powers and how she's going to use them, and isn't so foolproof with them. She can easily be caught out. And essentially, these group of people that she is friends with and interacts with are criminals because, you either work for the government or you're criminals, and they're on the criminal side. This was a really great story. I absolutely loved this. It was just so much fun. The characters were so lovable, and lovable is probably the wrong term, but really fun to spend time with. And lots of plot twists and turns and complex plot, not a simple plot, which I really liked. And I just loved it. Not as much as I loved Vicious, which was probably a better superhero book, but really fun regardless. Like, I want more. This has to be a series, please, because there are so many places this book could go, and I'm just so excited to see where it goes. I give this 5 stars. And finally this month I read Where She Went by Gail Forman. This is the sequel to If I Stay and follows Adam, Mia's boyfriend, 3 years after the events of If I Stay. I think it's a companion novel, kind of, not really a sequel. I really enjoyed this. I finished it today and I started it late last night, so I definitely enjoyed it. It's kind of, I found it almost more intense than If I Stay, but in totally different ways. Like, this hasn't got the life or death component, but it's dealing with a lot of grief and how that affects people. And for Adam, he's at the, right in the middle of his grief cycle, whereas in If I Stay, we're kind of at the start of Mia's, and it was just really touching. I love how music is used throughout this duology and how that affects the characters, and I just really loved these, and I'm very excited that I read both of them this month because they were really fun. Fun's probably the wrong word. Touching. So those were the books I read this month. Lots of them, yes. 11 books overall, 9 of which were full-length novels, 2 of which were not. But I found that a great achievement, especially seeing as I wrote a 50,000 word novel in this month as well. So I'm very proud of that fact. Let me know if you've read any of these. Comment down below with what you thought, or if you want to read any of these, because I'd love to talk about them. And I'll be seeing you soon with another video, which will be my December TBR. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you have a great December leading up to Christmas, because that's a thing that's coming soon. Thank you for watching this video, and bye!